was going into the river. But what was in between the sawmill and the prison was worse. We had 2 tanneries. So you're going from the freshest water in the world there to going through a sawmill, and then going through 2 tanneries up here, then going through the female factory, the women's prison, and then 2 more tanneries on the other side. So you've gone less than a kilometre down the rivulet. You've got the freshest water in the world to going through 4 tanneries, which is absolutely disgusting. Tanneries are leather factories. You ought to get animal skins and stuff and turn it to leather by curing it and treating it and hardening it and colouring it as well. And you use alarming amounts of really poisonous, harsh chemicals in that process. Arsenic's one, ammonia's one, and of course these days, you know, Bunnings and Mitre 10 have plenty of that for us if we need to do something like that. But the best source of ammonia we had in the 1800s, for example, is coming from human urine, really high and natural source of ammonia. So what we'd actually do in tanneries is collect people's urine off them and use that in the tanning process, you know, extracting the ammonia and things like that. And so what you've got going in is human waste products, animal waste products a lot of the time as well, you know, poisonous chemicals being used in this process, and imagine where it's all going, straight back in the rivulet. Well, a lot of it is going straight back in the rivulet after. Funny thing is tanneries actually buying people's urine off and giving them some money for it. That's quite an embarrassing way to make your money, isn't it? You'd rather be able to make money having a real job and feeding yourself. So everyone else usually has a bit of a crack at all the people who do sell their urine to the tannery. And what do we call those people? We call them piss poor, don't we? Because they're literally so poor that they've got to sell their own piss to make money. Nice. Pretty disgusting and horrible, but you know, it's a term we use all the time now. It's a bit of a laugh. It comes from back in the day. You would have had to be careful who you call piss poor in the 1800s, just in case you say it to someone and they get really upset. It's a bit of an insult back then, isn't it? So anyway, imagine the water going on the other side there. It's sewage water and it's poisonous. It's absolutely horrible. So we had a big problem of dirty drinking water in Hobart. So a lot of people were getting very sick and health problems that were relating to the water. You could actually even die from some of these health problems. So our water was so bad we were literally killing people. Now usually, one thing that is usually going to be almost guaranteed to be safe, especially if you can't drink your water supply, your fresh water, usually you can guarantee that the beer is going to be safe as well, because brewing beer is a natural way of sterilising the water that you're using, and beer is 90% water. So you know, boiling the water in that process will naturally sterilise it. You're also adding a bit of nutrition and things to the beer as well, malted grains and things, sugar, stuff like that. The only problem in Hobart is, yes, the beer I guess was sterile that was getting made, but it's hard to get rid of the flavour of those tanneries, isn't it? So while you can boil the toxins away, the flavour remains. And imagine brewing beer, it's not exactly like this, but imagine brewing is almost like a really super scientific complex way of making coffee, right? Yes, you can boil the water before you make your coffee and throw your beans into it, right? But if you've used 1820s Hobart water and you've boiled it, yes, you might have made it safe, but just because you throw the coffee in and mix it through, it doesn't magically make it nice tasting, does it? It's still going to be garbage coffee. So you can imagine that any beer made at the time, I guess it was safe to drink, but it still tasted like 4 tanneries, so no one wanted it. Not only that, but also we had a big problem in Hobart of the pubs making their own alcohol and their own liquor, and they're making basically fake rums and fake whiskies and things like that. So instead of actually nicely going through a proper distillation process and maturing your rum and your whiskey, which takes years, so one of the reasons why they weren't bothering to do that is because it does take so long. It takes a while before you actually start selling all the big barrels of whiskey or rum or anything like that. So what they do is they sort of do half the process. They get the ingredients, barley and water is exactly what you use to make beer, and it's the same to make whiskey. So barley and water, mix it through together, you get brown, sugary, sweet water. You then go distill that to whiskey, right? But what you do, if you've done that, but then there's no distillation involved or anything because it takes too long, what you can do is just brew a massive big batch of clear raw spirit, and the highest strength clear raw spirit you possibly can. It's quite easy to make methylated spirits rather than whiskey, isn't it, right? Just pure alcohol almost. It's like 95% ethanol is methode. You know, you're trying to get as much ethanol in this clear raw spirit as you can. Once you got your brown, sugary, sweet liquid, you pour it into an old empty whiskey bottle. So now it's the same colour as whiskey. It's the stuff that you would start usually making whiskey out of. Instead of distilling anything or sterilising it properly or anything like that, you just tip this raw alcohol in there until that brown, sugary, sweet water becomes about 40% or so. Now it's the same colour as whiskey, it's in a real whiskey bottle, and it's getting you drunk too. So it's almost the same thing, but what you haven't done is properly sterilise the water, and then you start throwing basically pure ethanol into it as well. And yes, it's getting you drunk, but it's because you're basically poisoning yourself as well. So we had a massive big problem with bootleg alcohol in Hobart. Actually, you hear stories about tourists still consuming alcohol made in the same way around the world, beer, and you hear about tourists getting really sick and ending up in hospital, losing their eyesight sometimes as well. Flavoured water and ethanol mixed together, and that's what Hobart was doing, and everyone was doing it. So you got poisonous water, beer that tastes like tanneries, and poisonous spirits. 50 deaths a month from poisonous alcohol consumption in Hobart at the time. So, you know, nothing was good to drink in Hobart. Here's Peter de Graves running quite a good sawmill, but then he goes, hang on, well, I'm not really using any of the water that I use for the sawmill except to operate machinery. I can use a ton more. And he realises that his water that he's got is fresh. Totally fresh and pristine, isn't it? Because he owns 3,500 acres up there. So he's literally sitting here in Hobart with the only supply of fresh water in the town. That's really handy if you think you're going to start making beer. And because there's literally no good alcohol or beer in Hobart at the time, that's what de Graves wants to do. So he's got fresh Tasmanian rainwater to use. He's got fresh hops and fresh barley. It's going to be a decent beer, isn't it? Unless you mess something up while you're brewing it. You know, you're always going to aim to make good beer, and if you've got fantastic ingredients at the beginning, it's quite easy to make a good beer. So imagine when we start selling our beer as well. It's easily the best product in Hobart by far. De Graves is smart too. He's a businessman first and foremost, so he wants to make money, and he knows that he's going to make more money if he actually sells this Cascade beer dirt cheap. Because what he's got is the best beer in Hobart by far. Sell it cheap enough so that everyone can buy it, and as much as they want. That means you got the wealthy people drinking it because it's fantastic tasting, and then you got the poorest of the poor and the working class all drinking it because it's cheap and affordable. So what happens is everyone in Hobart starts drinking Cascade beer. No one starts drinking, continues to drink any of the other things, do they? It's got to be one of the easiest beginnings to a brewery you can possibly imagine, being literally the sort of first safe and good tasting beer in Hobart. Capture the entire market, you know, easy as. No one drinks anything else for a very long time after that. Our Pale Ale was the first beer that came out in 1832. Since then, never gone out of production. The recipe's slightly different to what it once was, but that one Cascade beer, that style of beer, never gone out of production, still making it today. Alright, so that's a bit about our beginnings as a brewery. You know, makes sense, it's quite easy, and we were sort of given a lot by the government, giving us all the land and everything like that, and having the only water in Hobart, so very easy for us. But yeah, we're going to go across sort of into that driveway there. I'll talk about the 1927, then we'll get inside, we'll talk more about the production side of things.
Ready? Ready?
Don't mind heading up a mountain or anything while you're here in Hobart as well. Have a crack at all that water too.
Look, it's a fountain.
In the middle of winter,